The Aussie Report. News and information concerning corruption across Australia. G'day folks, it's Mad Aussie here and welcome to the Aussie Report. In this episode we're going to go through flags of Australia. Now I have chosen again the Wikipedia page to do this with. Not that I have 100% faith in their accuracy, it's just more that they have the greatest information in the one place. Easier than me going through multiple websites and trying to play videos of other people speaking and everything like that. Now, if people do know of some history and are able to correct what's being said here, please let us know, and maybe we can even contact Wikipedia and get them to correct their information online too, if it's that far out. Who knows? So with this, we will be able to, highlight, words here which highlight picture, bring up pictures and stuff like that, and we can look through it. And it has all the detail on how many points on each star and everything like that there's supposed to be, So, and I have briefed through most of this, and I am surprised at the level of detail it does go into. It's not too bad, from my understanding of flags in history so far, anyway. Alright, so let's begin. The flag of Australia is based on the British Blue Ensign, a blue field with the Union Jack in the upper hoist corner, augmented with a large white 7-pointed star, which is the Commonwealth Star, and a representation of the Southern Cross constellation made up of 5 white stars, 1 small 5-pointed star and 4 larger 7-pointed stars. Australia also has a number of other official flags representing its people and core functions of government. So the Blue Ensign flag, the British Blue Ensign flag, it just looks like this. And it, if you click on this link and it gives you, it'll open up and tell you all about the Blue Ensign flag. It just starts off with one of several British ensigns used by certain organisations or territories associated or formerly associated with the United Kingdom. It is used either plain or defaced with a badge or other emblems, etc. A blue field with a Union Jack, so simple Union Jack in the upper hoist corner. Below that there is the Commonwealth Star, which is a 7-pointed star. Then over to the right of the flag we got the Southern Cross, made up of 5 white stars, 1 small 5-pointed star and 4 larger 7-pointed stars. Its original design with a 6-pointed Commonwealth Star was chosen in 1901 from entries in a competition held following Federation, and was first flown in Melbourne on 3rd of September 1901, the date proclaimed in 1996 as Australian National Flag Day. A slightly different design was approved by King Edward VII in 1903. The current 7-pointed Commonwealth Star version was introduced by a proclamation dated 8th of December 1908. The dimensions were formally gazetted in 1934, and in 1954 the flag became recognised by and legally defined in the Flags Act 1953 as the Australian National Flag. So, that is the flag. End product. We will go down the main, paragraph here instead of hitting these side sections, because we do get into them further down. Next we are titled Design and Devices. In its original usage as the flag of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, the Union flag combines 3 heraldic crosses which represents the constituent countries of the United Kingdom, as constituted in 1801. The red St George Cross of England. So you got the red St George Cross of England, the white diagonal St Andrew's Cross of Scotland, which is this one, and the red diagonal St Patrick's Cross of Ireland, which is this one. The Union flag is thought to symbolise Australia's history as 6 British colonies and the principles upon which the Australian Federation is based, although more historic views sees its inclusion in the design as demonstrating loyalty to the British Empire. The Commonwealth Star, also known as the Federation Star, originally had 6 points representing the 6 Federation colonies. In 1908, a 7th point was added to symbolise the territory of Papua and new future territories. Another rationale for the change was to match the star used on the coat of arms, which was created in the same year. The Commonwealth Star does not have any official relation to Beta Centauri, despite the latter's brightness and location in the sky. However, in 1870, version of the flag of South Australia featured the pointer stars Alpha and Beta Centauri. The Southern Cross is one of the most distinctive constellations visible in the Southern Hemisphere and has been used to represent Australia since the early days of British settlement. Ivor Evans, one of the flag's designers, intended the Southern Cross to also refer to the 4 moral virtues ascribed to the 4 main stars by Dante: justice, prejudice, temperance, and fortitude. The number of points on the stars of the Southern Cross on the modern Australian flag differs from the original competition-winning design, in which they ranged between 5 and 9 points each, representing their relative brightness in the night sky. The stars are named after the first 5 letters of the Greek alphabet, in decreasing order of brightness in the sky. In order to simplify manufacture, the British Admiralty standardised the 4 larger outer stars at 7 points each, leaving the smaller, more central star with 5 points. This change was officially gazetted on 23rd of February 1903. So going back through this, we have the Southern Cross again. Constellations. Ivor Evans was an Australian businessman. As a 14-year-old schoolboy, he was one of the 5 winners of the 1901 Federal Flag Design Competition, held to design a national flag for Australia. That's not bad, 14-year-old boy. What have we got? Greek alphabet, the brightness of the different stars, and British Admiralty. The complete specification for the official design was published in the Commonwealth Gazette, 1934. Alright, now we've got the colours of the flag, and you actually get to use the colour codes if you want, the official colour codes. If you want to, make your own flag up, I guess, and fly that. The colour of the flag, although not specified by the Flags Act, have been given Pantone specifications by the Awards and Culture branch of the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet. The Australian Government Style Manual for Authors, Editors and Printers also gives CMYK and RGB specifications for depicting the flag in print and on-screen respectively. So these are on-screen colours and print colours, both. So I think you use in most sort of programs for online, I think we use these numbers here, but it's something you more professionals will know about. The blue shade also has a web-safe colour, which is here, used for certain digital screens that may have trouble displaying the shade of blue in the table above. The flag may be reproduced in a single colour, with the colour being either black or one of the 2 colours of the flag, albeit blue is generally preferred for single colour productions. So we have now construction. We may skip the construction. I'll leave you guys to read how to construct an Australian flag if that's something you wish to do. Protocol and guidelines for flying the flag are laid out in the 1953 Flags Act and in a pamphlet entitled The Australian National Flag, which is infrequently published by the Australian Government. The guidelines say that the Australian national flag is allowed to be flown on every day of the year and that it should be treated with respect and dignity it deserves as the nation's most important national symbol. The national flag must always be flown in a position superior to that of any other flag or ensign when flown in Australian or on Australian territory, and it should always be flown aloft and free. The flag must be flown in all government buildings and displayed in polling stations when there is a national election or referendum. Private pleasure craft can fly either the red ensign or the Australian national flag. The British blue ensign can be flown on an Australian-owned ship instead of the Australian flag if the owner has a warrant valid under British law. The Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet also advises that the flag should only be flown during daylight hours unless it's illuminated. Two flags should not be flown from the same flagpole. The flag should not be displayed upside down under any circumstance, not even to express a situation of distress. The flag is not to be placed or dropped on the ground, nor should it be used to cover an object in the lead up to an unveiling ceremony or to hide another material. Flags that have decayed or faded should not be displayed. According to a government publication, old or decayed flags should be disposed of in private in a dignified way. A method given as an example is to cut the flag into small pieces before being placed in the waste. When the flag is flown at half-mast, it should be recognisably at half-mast, for example, a third of the way down from the top of the pole. The Australian flag should never be flown half-mast at night. Flags are flown at half-mast on government buildings. On the death of the sovereign, and in this case they are saying the sovereign, the monarchy of Australia is Australia's form of government embodied in the Australian sovereign. The Australian monarchy is a constitutional monarchy modelled on the Westminster system of parliamentary government. On the death of the sovereign, from the time of announcement of the death up to and including the funeral, on the day the accession of the new sovereign is proclaimed, it is customary to raise the flag to the top of the mast from 11 a.m. On the death of the member of the royal family, on the death of the Governor-General or a former Governor-General, on the death of a distinguishing Australian citizen, flags in any locality may be flown at half-mast on the death of a notable local citizen on their day, or part of their day of their funeral. On the death of the head of state another country with which Australia has diplomatic relations, the flag would be flown on the day of the funeral. On Anzac Day, the flag is flown at half-mast until noon. On Remembrance Day, flags are flown at peak until 10:30 a.m, at half-mast from 10:30 a.m. to 11:03 a.m, then at peak for the remainder of the day. What do we got? The department provides a subscription-based email service called the Commonwealth Flag Network, which gives information on national occasions to fly the flag at half-mast, as well as national days of commemoration and celebration of the flag. The Australian national flag may be used for commercial or advertising purposes without formal permission as long as the flag is used in a dignified manner and reproduced completely and accurately. It should not be defaced by overprinting with words or illustrations. It should not be covered by other objects in displays, and all symbolic parts of the flag should be identifiable. It also must sit first, typically left, where more than one flag is used. For this reason, the Collingwood Football Club had to reverse its logo, which previously featured a flag, until a logo refreshed at the end of 2017. There have been several attempts to make desecration of the Australian flag a crime. In 1953, during the second reading debate on the Flags Act, the leader of the opposition, Arthur Colwell, unsuccessfully called for provisions to be added to the bill to criminalise desecration. Michael Cobb introduced private members' bills in 1989, 1990, 91 and 92 to ban desecration, but on each occasion the bill lapsed. In 2002, the leader of the National Party, John Anderson, proposed to introduce laws banning desecration of the Australian flag, a call that attracted support from some parliamentarians, both in his own party and the senior coalition partner, the Liberal Party. The Minister John Howard rejected the calls, stating that, "In the end, I guess it's part of the sort of free speech code that we have in this country." In 2003, the Australian flag's desecration of the flag bill was tabled in Parliament by Trish Draper without support from Howard and subsequently lapsed. In 2006, following a flag burning incident during the 2005 Cronulla riots and a burnt flag display by a Melbourne artist, Liberal MP Bronwyn Bishop introduced the Protection of Australian National Flag Desecration of the Flag Bill in 2006. The bill sought to make it a criminal offence to willfully destroy or otherwise mutilate the flag in circumstances where a reasonable person would infer that the destruction of the mutilation is intended publicly to express contempt or disrespect of the flag or the Australian nation. The bill received a second reading but subsequently lapsed and did not go to vote in the House of Representatives. So now we're moving on to history. This is probably the part that some of you might be interested in. With all the talk that's going around with the protests and everything like that, and the sovereign sit movement, which is, going through Australia as well at the moment. Many people are questioning flags and questioning their patriotism to the Australian flag, I guess. The Union flag, as the flag of the British Empire, was first used on Australian soil on the 29th of April 1770 when Lieutenant James Cook landed at Botany Bay. Following the arrival of the First Fleet, Captain Arthur Phillip established a convict settlement at Sydney Cove on the 26th of January 1788. He first raised the Union flag on the 7th of February 1788 when he proclaimed the colony of New South Wales. The Union flag at that stage was the one introduced in 1606, which did not include the St. Patrick's saltire. This is the St. Patrick's saltire. It was included from 1801 after the Acts of the Union 1801. The second version, post-1801, is depicted on the Australian flag. It was often used to represent them collectively, and each colony also had its own flag based on the Union flag. As the Australian national consciousness began to emerge, several flag movements were formed and unofficial new flags came into common usage. Two attempts were made throughout the 19th century to design a national flag. The first such attempt was the National Colonial Flag, which is down here. You've got the National Colonial Flag. Created in 1823 to 1824 by Captain John Nicholson and John Bingle. The flag consisted of a red cross on a white background with an 8-pointed star on each of the 4 limbs of the cross, while incorporating a Union flag in the canton. The most popular national flag of the period was the Federation flag, down here. Also designed by Nicholson. The flag was the same as the National Colonial Flag, except that the cross was blue instead of resembling that of the St. George. Although the flag was designed by Nicholson in 1831, it did not become widely popular until the latter part of the century, when calls for federation began to grow louder. These flags and many others, such as the Eureka flag, which came into use at the Eureka Stockade in 1854, featured stars representing the Southern Cross. The oldest known flag to show the stars arranged as they are seen in the sky is the Anti-Transportation League flag, down here, the Anti-Transportation League flag, which is similar in design to the present national flag. The differences were that there was no Commonwealth star, with the components of the Southern Cross are depicted with 8 points and in gold. This flag was only briefly in usage, as 2 years after the formation of the Anti-Transportation League in 1851, the colonial authorities decided to stop the intake of convicts, so the ATL ceased its activities. The Eureka flag has become an enduring symbol in Australian culture and has been used by various groups and movements. The Murray River flag, just this last one down here, popular since the 1850s, is still widely used by boats and traverse Australia's main waterway. It is the same as the national colonial flag, except that the white background in the 3 quadrants, other than the canton, were replaced with 4 alternating blue and white stripes, representing the 4 major rivers that run into the Murray River. So, now we are on to 1901 Federal Flag Design Competition. As Federation approached, thoughts turned to an official federal flag. In the year 1900, the Melbourne Herald conducted a design competition with a prize of 25 Australian pounds, which equated to $3,700 in 2017, in which entries were required to include the Union flag and Southern Cross, resulting in a British ensign-style flag. The competition, conducted by the Review of Reviews for Australasia, a Melbourne-based publication, later that year thought such a restriction seemed unwise, despite observing that designs without these emblems were unlikely to be successful. Nonetheless, it suggested that entries incorporate the 2 elements in their design. After Federation on the 1st of January 1901, the following receipt of a request for the British government to design a new flag, the new Commonwealth government held an official competition for a new federal flag in April. The competition attracted 32,823 entries, including those originally sent to the Review of Reviews. One of these submitted by an unnamed governor of a colony. The 2 contests were merged after the Review of Reviews agreed to being integrated into the government initiative. The £75 prize money of each competition were combined and augmented by a further £50 donated by Havelock Tobacco Company. Each competitor was required to submit 2 coloured sketches, a red ensign for the merchant service and public use, and a blue ensign for naval and official use. The designs were judged on 7 criteria: loyalty to the Empire, federation, history, heraldry, distinctiveness, utility, and cost of manufacture. The majority of these designs incorporated the Union flag and Southern Cross, but native animals were also popular, including one that depicted a variety of indigenous animals playing cricket. The entries were put on display at the Royal Exhibition Building in Melbourne, and the judges took 6 days to deliberate before reaching their conclusion. 5 almost identical entries were chosen as the winning design, and the designers shared a £200, which was $25,000 in 2009, prize money. They were Ivor Evans, a 14-year-old schoolboy from Melbourne; Leslie John Hawkins, a teenager apprentice to an optical from Sydney; Egbert John Nuttall, an architect from Melbourne; Annie Dorrington, an artist from Perth; and William Stevens, a ship's officer from Auckland, New Zealand. The 5 winners received £40 each. The differences to the current flag were the 6-pointed Commonwealth star, while the component stars in the Southern Cross had different numbers of points, with more if the real star was brighter. This led to 5 stars of 9, 8, 7, 6, and 5 points respectively. The flag's initial reception was mixed. Readers of the Age newspaper were told that a huge blue ensign with the prize design of the Southern Cross and a 6-pointed star thereon was run up to the top of the flagstaff on the dome and breaking. streamed out on the heavy southwesterly breeze, a brave and inspiring picture. The report carried by the Argus newspaper was also celebratory in nature, stating, "In years to come, the flag which floated yesterday in the exhibition building over Her Excellency the Countess Hopetoun, who stood for Great Britain, and the Prime Minister Mr. Barton, who stood for Australia, will, and all human probability, become the emblem upon which the millions of free people of the Commonwealth will gaze with a thrill of national pride." Alternatively, the then Republican magazine, The Bulletin, labelled it "a staled rechauffer of British flag with no artistic value, no national significance. Minds move slowly and Australia is still Britain's little boy. What more natural than that he should accept his father's cut-down garments, lacking the power to protest and only dimly realising this will? That bastard flag is a true symbol of the bastard state of Australian opinion." Okay. Here we have the Melbourne Herald competition winning design, the blue version of winning design, and as approved by King Edward VII. And it's the stars mainly, the amount of points on the stars that are different between these two. As the design was basically the Victorian flag with a star added, many critics in both the federal government and the New South Wales government objected to the chosen flag for being too Victorian. They wanted the Australian Federation flag, and Prime Minister Barton, who had been promoting the Federation flag, submitted this flag along with that chosen by the judges to the Admiralty for final approval. The Admiralty chose the red for private vessels and blue ensigns for government ships. The Barton government regarded both the blue and red ensigns as colonial maritime flags, and grudgingly agreed to fly it only on naval ships. Later governments, that of Chris Watson in 1904 and Andrew Fisher in 1910, were also unhappy with the design, wanting something more distinctively and more indicative of Australian unity. On 3rd of September 1901, the new Australian flag flew for the first time from the dome of the Royal Exhibition Building in Melbourne. The names of the joint winners of the design competition were announced by Hersey, Countess of Hopetoun, the wife of the Governor-General, the 7th Earl of Hopetoun, and she unfurled the flag for the first time since 1996. This date has been officially known as Australian National Flag Day. The competition-winning designs were submitted to the British Colonial Secretary in 1902. Prime Minister Edmund Barton announced in the Commonwealth Gazette that King Edward VII had officially approved the design as the flag of Australia on 11th of February 1903. The published version made all the stars in the Southern Cross 7-pointed, apart from the smallest, and is the same as the current design except the 6-pointed Commonwealth star. So now we are moving on to blue versus red ensign. In the decades following Federation, the red ensign was also the preeminent flag in use by private citizens on land. This was largely due to the Commonwealth Government and the flag suppliers restricting sales of blue ensign to the general public. Both the blue and red versions were used by armed forces during the First and Second World Wars. A colorised version of a photograph held by the Australian War Memorial of the Armistice Day celebrations in Sydney's Martin Place, 11th of November 1918, reveals both ensigns being displayed by the assembled crowd. Illustrations and photos of the opening of Australia's Provisional Parliament House in 1927 show Australian ensigns flown alongside Union flags. However, sources disagree of the colours of the Australian flags, leaving open the possibility that either ensign or both were used. A memo from the Prime Minister Department dated 6th of March 1939 states that the red ensign is the flag to be flown by the public generally, and the federal government policy was the flying of the Commonwealth blue ensign is reserved for Commonwealth government use, but there is no reservation in the case of the Commonwealth merchant flag or red ensign. In the 1940s, the federal government began to encourage public use of the blue ensign. Despite this, there remained confusion until the Flags Act 1953 declared the blue ensign to be the national flag and the red ensign the Australian Mercantile Marine. It has been claimed that this choice was made on the basis that the predominantly red version carried too many communist overtones for the government of the day to be legislated for as the chief national symbol. Although no cabinet documents yet released to the public, including the more detailed minutes, have ever been adduced in support of this theory, the red ensign continues to be paraded on Anzac Day in recognition of its historical significance. Technically, private non-commercial vessels were liable to a substantial fine if they did not fly the British red ensign. However, an Admiralty warrant was issued on 5th of December 1938, authorising these vessels to fly the Australian red ensign. The Shipping Registration Act 1981 reaffirmed that the Australian red ensign was the proper colours for commercial ships over 24 metres and length. As a result of the declaration of 3rd of September as Merchant Navy Day in 2008, the red ensign can be flown on land alongside the Australian national flag on this occasion as a matter of protocol. So, moving on, we have status of the Union Jack. The blue ensign replaced the Union Jack at the Olympic Games at St. Louis in 1904. In the same year, due to lobbying by Richard Crouch, MP, it had the same status as the Union flag in the UK. When the House of Representatives proclaimed that the blue ensign should be flown upon all forts, vessels, saluting places and public buildings of the Commonwealth upon all occasions when flags are used, the government agreed to fly the blue ensign on special flag days, but not if it meant additional expense, which undermined the motion. The blue ensign could only be flown on a state government building if a state flag was not available. On 2nd of June 1904, a resolution was passed by Parliament to replace the Union Jack with the Australian flag on forts. Initially, the Department of Defence resisted using the flag, considering it to be a Marine ensign and favouring King's regulations that specified the use of the Union Jack. After being approached by the Department of Defence, Prime Minister Chris Watson stated in Parliament that he was not satisfied with the design of the Australian flag and that implementation of the 1904 resolution could wait until consideration was given to adopt another flag, which in our opinion was more appropriate. In 1908, Australian Army Military Order number 5808 ordered the Australian ensign replace the Union flag at all military establishments. From 1911, it was the saluting flag of the Australian Army at all reviews and ceremonial parades. The Royal Australian Navy, the RAN, was promulgated on 5th of October 1911 and was directed to fly the British white ensign on the stern and the flag of Australia on the jackstaff. Despite the government wanting to use the blue ensign on Australian warships, officers continued to fly the Union flag, and it was not until 1913, following public protest in Fremantle after its use for the review of HMS Melbourne, that the government reminded them of the 1911 legislation. The British white ensign was finally replaced by the distinctive Australian white ensign on 1st of March 1967. Despite the new Australian flag's official use from 1901 until 1920s, the Federation flag remained the most popular Australian flag for public and even some official events. It was flown at the 1907 State Premiers Conference in Melbourne and during the 1927 visit to Australia at the Duke and Duchess of York, the future King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. And the Federation flag is this one here. In 1920s, there was a debate over whether the blue ensign was reserved for Commonwealth buildings only, culminating in a 1924 agreement that the Union flag should take precedence as the national flag, with state and local governments henceforth able to use the blue ensign. As the Union flag was recognised as the national flag, it was considered disloyal to fly either ensign without the Union flag alongside, and it was the Union flag that covered the coffins of Australian war dead. In 1940, the Victorian government passed legislation allowing schools to purchase blue ensigns, which in turn allowed its use by private citizens. Prime Minister Robert Menzies then recommended schools, government buildings and private citizens to use the blue ensign, issuing a statement the following year allowing Australians to use either ensign, providing it was done so respectively. Prime Minister Ben Chifley issued a similar statement in 1947. On 4th of December 1950, the Prime Minister Scott Menzies affirmed the blue ensign as the national flag, and in 1951 King George VI approved the government's recommendation. When the Flags Bill was introduced into Parliament on 20th of November 1953, Menzies said, "This bill is very largely a formal measure which puts into legislative form what has become almost the established practice in Australia. The design adopted was submitted to His Majesty King Edward VII, and he was pleased to approve of its Australian flag in 1902. However, no legislative action has ever been taken to determine the precise form of the flag or the circumstances of its use, and this bill has been brought down to produce that result." The status was formalised on 14th of February 1954 when Queen Elizabeth II gave royal assent to the Flags Act in 1953, which had been passed 2 months earlier. The monarch's assent was timed to coincide with the Queen's visit to the country and came after she had opened the new session of Parliament. The Act confers statutory powers of the Government-General to appoint flags and ensigns of Australia and authorise warrants and make rules as to use of flags. Section 8 ensures that the right of privilege of a person to fly a Union flag is not affected by the Act. South Australia chose to continue with the Union flag as a national flag until 1956, when schools were given the option of using either the Union flag or Australia flags. The Union flag was still regarded as the national flag by many Australians well into the 1970s, which inspired Arthur Simont's campaign from 1968 to 1982 to encourage Australians to give the Australian flag precedence. By the mid-1980s, the Commonwealth Government no longer reminded Australians that they had the right to fly the Union flag alongside the national flag, or provided illustrations of how to correctly display them together. Okay, getting closer to the end here. This is a long one. And next up we've got Flag Day. In 1996, the Governor-General, Sir William Deane, issued a proclamation recognising the annual commemoration of Australian National Flag Day to be held on 3rd of September. Flag Day celebrations had been occurring in Sydney since 1985. The inaugural event was held under the auspices of the New South Wales branch of the Australian National Flag Association to commemorate the anniversary of the flag being first flown in 1901. On Flag Day, ceremonies are held in schools, major centres, and the Governor-General, governors and some politicians attend or release statements to the media. Australian National Flag Day is not a public holiday. This moves on to centenary flags and Parliamentary House centenary flag. If you guys want to read that, I'm going to skip it and let you guys either pause this and read it. or open up the article which is linked below and check it out yourselves. It then moves on to other Australian flags. The Australian Air Force ensign, Australian Civil Aviation ensign, Australian Aboriginal flag, Australian Torres Strait Islander flag, a link to the Australian Defence Force ensign. What does that look like? Shows nothing. Queen's Personal Australia flag. So I can imagine the Queen's probably got a few personal flags, now that I think about it. This says, under Section 5 of the Flags Act 1953, the Governor-General may proclaim flags other than the national flag and the red ensign as flags or ensigns of Australia. 5 flags have been appointed in this manner. The first 2 were the Royal Australian Navy ensign and the Royal Australian Air Force ensign, the flags used by the Royal Australian Navy and the Royal Australian Air Force. The Australian Army has no ensign of its own, but they are given the ceremonial task to be the defender of the national flag. The Air Force and the Navy flew the appropriate British ensigns, the White Ensign and the Royal Air Force ensign, until the adoption of similar ensigns based in the Australian national flag in 1948 and 1967 respectively. The current Navy and Air Force ensigns are officially appointed in 1967 and 1982 respectively. The Queen's personal flag was approved by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II on 20 September 1962 and it is flown only when she is visiting Australia. It is used in a similar way as the Royal Standard of the United Kingdom. In 1995, the Aboriginal flag and the Torres Strait Islander flag were also appointed flags of Australia. While mainly seen as a gesture of reconciliation, this recognition caused a small amount of controversy at the time, with the then opposition leader John Howard describing it as divisive. Some Indigenous people, such as the flag's designer, Harold Thomas, felt that the government was appropriating their flag, saying it doesn't need any more recognition. The Australian Defence Force ensign was proclaimed in 2000. This flag is used to represent the Defence Force when more than one branch of the military is involved, such as the Australian Defence Force Academy by the Minister for Defence. The Legislative Instruments Act of 2003 required the proclamations of these flags to be lodged as a federal register. Due to the administrative oversight, they were not, and the proclamations were automatically repealed. The Governor-General of Australia issued new proclamations dated 25th of January 2008, with effect from 1st of January 2008 or October 1st, 2006, in the case of Defence Force ensign. In addition to the 7 flags declared under the Flags Act, there are 2 additional Commonwealth flags, the Australian Civil Aviation ensign, which is this one, and the Australian Customs flag, which is this one, 8 vice-regal flags and 9 state territory flags that are recognised as official flags through other means. And we've got flag debate next, and I believe this is the end of the video here after this. So let's see what this has to say. There have been mild but persistent debates over whether or not the Union flag should be removed from the canton of the Australian flag. This debate has culminated on several occasions, such as the period preceding the Australian bicentenary of 1988 and during the Prime Ministership of Paul Keating, who publicly supported a change in the flag, saying, "I do not believe that the symbols and in the expressions of the full sovereignty of Australian nationalhood can ever be complete while we have the flag with the flag of another country on the corner of it." And guys, I am really curious to know what you people think of the Australian flag, of the red ensign, the blue ensign, the Eureka flag. So drop a comment down below and let me know if you think that we should just adopt the red ensign and stick with that, if we need a whole new flag to represent Australia. Yeah, let us know what your thoughts are about this. And so carrying on, there are two lobby groups involved in the flag debate. AusFlag, which was established in 1981, which supports changing the flag, and the Australian National Flag Association, established 1983, which wants to keep the existing flag. The primary arguments for keeping the flag cite historic precedents, while those for changing the flag are based around the idea that the status quo does not accurately depict Australia's status as an independent and multicultural nation, nor is its design unique enough to easily distinguish it from similar flags, such as the flags of New Zealand, Cook Islands, Tuvalu, despite the other argument that this is not uncommon, as seen with Romania and Chad sharing their identical flags. The similarity between the flag of Australia and those of other countries is often derived from a common colonial history. The coalition government under John Howard in 1996 formally recognised the commemoration of Australian National Flag Day. In 1998, sponsored an amendment to the Flags Act to require any changes to the national flag design to be passed at a plebiscite along the same lines of the 1977 National Song Poll. In 2002, supplied ANFA's promotional video free to all primary schools, and in 2004 required all schools receiving federal funds to fly the Australia flag. AusFlag periodically campaigns for flag change in association with national events such as the 2000 Summer Olympics, which is what we've got featured over here, is their advert or something calling for change and redesign of the Australian flag through the 2000 Summer Olympics, and holds flag design competitions. That's the AusFlag. While ANFA's activities include promotion of the existing flag through events such as National Flag Day, on Australia Day in 2018, AusFlag released an alternative design of the flag without the Union Jack, featuring a Commonwealth Star and Southern Cross. The date of the release was met with some backlash, which Harold Scrooby, AusFlag's executive director, called the lowest form of censorship. Following the release, Malcolm Turnbull, then Prime Minister and former AusFlag director, told the group that the flag would never change, viewing it as an important symbol of Australian history. In 2004, news poll that asked, "Are you personally in favour or against changing the Australian flag so as to remove the Union Jack emblem?" was supported by 32% of residents and opposed by 57%, with 11% uncommitted. In 2010, Morgan Poll then asked, "Do you think Australia should have a new design for our national flag?" which was supported by 29% of respondents and opposed by 66%, with 5% uncommitted. In 2013, a survey found that 95% of surveyed adults stated that they took pride in the national flag, which was enjoying increasingly popularity. Half, which is 50%, said they were extremely proud. So that is the end of the flag debate. That is the end of this flag article and the end of Wikipedia here. This link will be in the description below. Please like, share, comment. Definitely leave a comment, guys. I'd like to know what you guys think. Was there any changes needing done to this article? I did skip bits, and there was links all through this to move on and go deeper and further into other flags and stuff like that as well. So do remember that. But yeah, let us know what you think, and I'll catch you all in the next video.
You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me.